Hi, my name is Matt Wilson, and today we're going to be talking about the history of Australia. And let's just say, all this information will be of good quality. Come on, that was funny.
No, it wasn't.
Just cue the intro. Okay, so with my partners Alex Soam and Alexis Martinez, we're going to discuss what events exactly had the most impact on the development of Australian culture. So, my theory is that it was most impacted by the transport of Nottinghamshire convicts to Australia. So, after the Revolutionary War, the English could no longer send their prisoners to America to be dealt with. So instead, they had to find a new area to send them to, which was Australia. And so they were mainly taken to Australia via merchant charters that were mainly merchants. The most common way for convicts to be taken to Australia were via merchant charters, who were often compensated for taking convicts to Australia. They were paid about €5 per convict that they took to Australia and because of this, taking prisoners to Australia became a great way to earn revenue. So one of the most famous merchant charters was the sailor James Cook, who was an important sailor in the Age of Discovery, discovering many new places like the eastern shores of Australia. One place he had discovered was Botany Bay, and this became one of the most common places for convicts to be shipped to Australia at. Captain James Cook often described Australia as the outcast of God's works. This reflected the poor conditions of convicts being shipped to Australia and the conditions of living in Australia. The convicts are often treated poorly en route to Australia, with poor health conditions and many getting sick and dying before even reaching Australia. Once prisoners served their sentence in Australia, they were able to relocate to more civilized areas of Australia without convicts living there, but they were still not allowed to return to England. Eventually, Parliament decided not to send convicts to Australia anymore, as it stated that it was no more than a leisurely journey to another place with a better climate. So, even though they stopped this practice of sending convicts there were still many people sent there over the years, and because of this, the history of Australia was changed irrevocably. Next, with talking about the Australian Gold Rush, is Alex Soam.
Alright, so I'm here to talk to you guys about the Australian Gold Rush. So, before the Australian Gold Rush, Australia and its colonies were just a bunch of lawless colonies just flying around doing their own thing. But that all changed in 1851 when a man by the name of Edward Hargreaves, a man who was obsessed with finding gold, as he had just been in California just 2 years before, found just a speck of gold in an area and named it Ophir. Now, as soon as somebody finds a speck of gold in an area, there's going to be thousands of people everywhere, and that's exactly what happened. Now, alright, so in just a few short years, New South Wales mined for over 26.5 tons of gold. Now, of course, the English themselves were not allowed to just get in this gold action, so hundreds of thousands of immigrants from all across the world came in hopes of searching for gold. Now, of course, when there's money involved, there's going to be corruption, there's going to be lawless colonies just flying around doing their own thing. But that all changed in 1851 when a man by the name of Edward Hargreaves, a man who was obsessed with finding gold, as he had just been in California just 2 years before, found just a speck of gold in an area and named it Ophir. Now, as soon as somebody finds a speck of gold in an area, there's going to be thousands of people everywhere, and that's exactly what happened. And in December of 1854, the Eureka Stockade happened, where over 1,000 miners gathered to rebel against the police, and over 22 miners were killed. Now, after this, the Australian government decided that they wanted to help the miners instead of get rid of them, and they began to grant miners more rights, and even allowing them to vote in the government. Now, many historians think of this as the beginning of Australian democracy. The Australian Gold Rush had an everlasting effect on Australia, as before it was just a lawless bunch of English colonies that were really just prisoners. But after the economy began to grow, foreign people from all over the world started coming in, and even democracy started happening, which I believe the gold rush was the most important event in Australian history. And now Alexis Martinez is here to talk about the changes in the Australian government.
Hello. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is the changes in government. So beginning from the late 1880s to the 1900s, right after the gold rush, there's actually a decline in trade, which actually informed the decline in government. So trade started to decline, and the prices of goods also started to decline. And so many of the investors from the trading, they started to be fearful of how much money they're going to bring in. So mainly the British investors, they started to bring out their money, and they started to withdraw their money from the banks. And this also included many small investors. Later on though, in 1891, 21 banks and loan companies started to fall. One bank in particular, the large Mercantile Bank of Victoria, it collapsed, followed by the Federal Bank collapse. The Bank of South Australia, on the other hand, was one of the few banks to stay running, with the help of the Union Bank. In 1893, many of the banks started to reform again, and they started to make more money, which eventually helped the government to increase. So now, later in 1890, there was the beginning of the Labour Party. The Labour Party was led by the Union leader, Robert Harris, who presented the Trades and Labour Council to propose Labour electoral leagues in every electorate to manage the leagues of Australia. After 1894, the Labour Party held most of the power because it helped to balance the power between the free traders and the protectionists in New South Wales. So the party became the largest opposition group in Australia to keep the balance of power within the government. So now, after the meeting, they began to produce a constitution. And in 1897, the delegates of Australia met for the first time in Adelaide. They constructed the constitution that vested the powers of defense, immigration, external affairs, and ending disputes amongst all of the colonies, which many of the colonies actually did not expect. They all thought they were all going to disagree on the Constitution, but many of them actually agreed on it. And many of the colonists, they also did not expect to have similarities within the other colonies. So the changes in government actually did play a huge role in Australian history, because most of the colonies and the colonists, they did not think that they would come together to form one country. But because they found similarities within each other, they all became one and formed Australia.
So, in conclusion, the banks had the most influential effect on the history of Australia.
The changes in decline in the government had a long-lasting effect on Australia, and we believe that they were the most important.
Because of the changes in government, we think that it affected the history of Australia because it formed the modern Australia that we know today.
So Alexis won.
Boom, yay.
Yay!
Good job. My name's Matt.
I'm Alex.
I'm Alexis.
And this has been Crash Course World History. Thanks for watching.
Alright, so we're done.
Yep.
Yeah!